Hi team, I hope you're all well. Today I will be doing my February wrap up. This is probably the earliest I've ever recorded a February wrap up. It is March 1st. So I am definitely on it. I think I just want to get it out of the way. Last month I felt very overwhelmed with my wrap up and I almost didn't do it. And it was like probably the back end of the month and by the time it went up, because I read 29 books. This month I've read 30. So again, I'm feeling very overwhelmed. I just want to get through it. I just wanted to let you guys know that I think what I'm going to do from here on out, I don't like recording my wrap-ups, so I don't enjoy editing them. In fact, it's one of the worst videos I possibly edit, so because I feel like I'm not very good at explaining books very well, which is, I know, terrible for a booktuber, but I just like to, you know, gush about the books that I like, and I hate discussing the books I don't like, because I don't like to rip books to shreds. That's somebody's heart and soul, you know, that's got into a book. So if I didn't like it, that's my opinion, but I don't like to go on about it too much because I don't like to do that to an author or to a book. I just don't like to do it. So I don't particularly like wrap-ups unless I'm gushing about books that I really love. So on that basis, what I'm going to be doing is every 2 weeks I am going to do a recent reads. I've seen a lot of other people doing this either at the end of a week or every 2 weeks or something. So I think for me, with the sort of sheer amount of books that I'm reading in a month, I think it works out a lot better rather than doing like a 45-minute wrap-up that I've absolutely hated doing and didn't want to edit, and it took me, you know, I sat on it for like weeks on end. So on that basis, you will still be getting wrap-ups from me. They'll just be every 2 weeks and it'll be called like recent reads or something. Rather than a month-long wrap-up, it will be every 2 weeks what I've read in those 2 weeks. So I just wanted to let you guys know that that's the way this is going to go from now on, and hopefully that's all right with you guys. I don't think you guys want to sit through 45 minutes of me not really explaining my books very well that I enjoyed. I think I might get my thoughts a lot more coherent if I'm only explaining, you know, 15 books rather than 30 books. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if the video will necessarily be any less time. Hopefully it will, but I don't know if it necessarily will be. Maybe I might be able to get my thoughts a bit more clearer and I will discuss the books a bit better. That's what I'm kind of hoping anyway. I'm trying to get better at describing books and explaining them to you guys, because obviously if I enjoy them I want you guys to pick them up, but if my explanation is rubbish you're just gonna be like, oh, it sounds a bit shit. I've picked up books before now that have sounded fantastic from the booktuber, and I've either heard about them and just thought, oh, I'm not too bothered, or I've never heard of them before and then a booktuber will explain them to me. That's what I want to sort of, the level that I want to get to. I want to be able to explain a book properly with very coherent thoughts, and as we go through this you'll probably realise that that is something I'm shit at. So let's get to it, because there's 30 books on here. I don't know if I'm going to go into them too much because we'll be here a very long time otherwise, because there's 30 books. So first book that I've DNF'd, so I read 30 books, I DNF'd 4, and I'll tell you about them in this video because I do have them with me, and I want to tell you why I DNF'd them as well. So you will see this after a YouTube video that's gone up from me called Reading Booktubers Favourites, so you will notice a lot of those in here. I will let you know if they were part of that video. You could go check that video out. I'll link it in the description box down below. So the first book that I finished was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was on that video. I loved this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was fantastic. I listened to the audiobook, and I think that's what I'm going to do for all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books from here on out. She has very quickly become one of my favourite authors. You'll see why later on in this video, and I loved this. The writing style was fantastic, and it's written so well to the point that I like literally would Google daily when I was listening to this. I would daily Google about Daisy Jones and the Six. There might be a part from another person who is an author of a book about Daisy Jones, or there may be song lyrics in the back of the book, which there are. I don't know why I'm saying maybe. There are song lyrics in the back of the book and things like that, and like I just sat there and I thought the detail that that Taylor Jenkins Reid's gone into this is incredible. To actually sit there and write song lyrics, I can't remember now how many songs are in the back of the book, but I'm fairly certain it's not just one. Oh, there's not. She's got like an entire set in the back of the book of songs, and I sat there and I thought, has somebody actually written these songs? Like, where can I listen to these? I'm so desperate to listen to them. So it was just incredible. It's just unbelievable. One of my favourite historical fictions that I've ever read in my entire life. I loved it so much. Absolutely loved it. If this isn't in my top 10, if it's not in my top 5, to be perfectly honest, I'm going to be super surprised. I loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. Incredible. I don't know why I've waited so long to pick it up. I'm obsessed with that book. Next, I read The Siren by Kiera Cass. So I'm really glad I picked this up because I've been wanting to get into something by Kiera Cass for a while. I really want to pick up the Selection series. I do have the first one in the series and I think I'm going to pick it up soon. I gave this 4 stars. It was really good. Rising Star was really good. Really quick and easy read as well. I listened to the audio. It's very good indeed. 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Tea Dragon Society by Katie O'Neill. I loved this. It was so cute, as everybody else has loved it. I've given it 5 out of 5 stars, obviously. The tea dragons are adorable. I don't think I need to tell you what this is about because you've probably seen it a million times on everybody else's channel. I am very late to the party indeed, and I think my tea dragon would be the chamomile tea dragon because just look at how adorable they are. I am so loving it, although I do really like the Earl Grey tea dragon as well. And that's Brittany from Brittany the Bibliophile's favourite. It's just so cute. So yeah, really love this. So cute indeed. This is not the only graphic novel on here from Katie O'Neill as well, which is surprising. So then I read Wizards of Once Twice Magic, which is the second in the series. I listened to this on audio. I would highly recommend picking these up on audio. Oh my god, English in okay. I would highly recommend picking these up on audio. David Tennant narrates them and he is fantastic. This is following, I'll not tell you what this one is doing because that will spoil it, but we are following Wish and Zar. Wish is a warrior, Zar is a wizard, and in the first book these two have been grown up to sort of hate each other's kind of races, if you like. So the wizards hate the warriors and the warriors hate the wizards, and Zar is struggling because he's not coming to his magic and he is trying to get witches magic, if you like, and witches are kind of deemed bad people. Witches magic is like black magic and he shouldn't really want it, and he causes absolute chaos in trying to get it. And actually Zar and Wish become friends and they continue on an adventure in the second book. I also have the third book, so I'm hoping to pick that up soon, but I really enjoyed it. Fantastic. Gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. The audio is brilliant. David Tennant's fantastic. Really good. Then I read The Guinevere Deception by Kirsten White. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It was really good. This is a King Arthur retelling, but told from the perspective of Guinevere, and she has to go in and marry King Arthur. Turns out she's actually protecting him, but people don't know this. They think she's a princess and she's coming to marry King Arthur. So she's trying to protect him because there are some bad people trying to kill the king, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I liked the magic system in here. I really enjoyed where it went. I liked how strong our protagonist was, Guinevere, and I really enjoyed that. I just liked as well the relationship. So this has got the fake dating trope in here, which I loved. That's my favourite trope ever, and I really enjoyed it. I liked how that kind of blossomed, and yeah, I just really liked it. It was so good, and I do highly recommend. I know this has got a few mixed reviews, but I think overall a lot of people are enjoying this, so I really enjoyed it. I read this for the Myth Tape Book Club, so I really enjoyed this. Good shout, Ashley. So yeah, very good indeed. 4 stars. Then I read Stars Above by Marissa Meyer. This is the Lunar Chronicles collection basically, so you read this at the end, like after you finished winter, and I really enjoyed this. So this gave us the backstories for all of the characters from the Lunar Chronicles. Not only is it following the 4 girls, but it also gives you the backstory for Carswell, Jason, Wolf and Kai, and we get the backstory of somebody else as well, but I never really figured out who it was. Was it the little android? I didn't really get it. I was really confused by that one. But overall, the last story in this sort of gives you a what happened after winter story, and I really loved it. It was so good. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this series. I highly recommend the Lunar Chronicles if you are interested in sci-fi, fantasy retellings, absolutely everything. It was amazing, outstanding, one of my favourite series. I'm definitely going to reread it at some point. Highly recommend you pick it up. Then I read Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare, which is the first book in the Infernal Devices series. I believe that there is a read-along going for this at the moment. I'm not fully sure who is hosting it, to be honest. I was loosely taking part. I like picked this up on a whim that I might read it, but I ended up doing, and I put the second one on March's TBR, so I'm looking forward to continuing with this. I actually gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was very, very good. Slow going to begin with. I think I was struggling with the time element, but it was nice to be back with the Shadowhunters. So I, for a while now, maybe about a year, have not picked anything up from the Shadowhunter universe, because I smashed like the whole of the Mortal Instruments and then the first 2 books in the Infernal Devices in January and February last year, ready for meeting Cassandra Clare in February to get the Queen of Air and Darkness. So then I didn't pick anything up from her. As far as did I? No, I didn't, as far as the Shadowhunters is concerned. So for me to pick this up in January was awesome. This is following Tessa Gray, who it turns out is a warlock. She doesn't really know that in the beginning, but it turns out she's a warlock. We're also following Jem Carstairs and Will Herondale and the Shadowhunters that are sort of involved in their institute at this time. And it was really, really good. It was a really good time. I had a right good laugh. It was nice to sort of meet these people because I have heard about them so much in the Mortal Instruments and also in the Dark Artifices. So it was nice to finally meet these people. Obviously this is set in the 1800s, like late 1800s. So yeah, it was just a bit different for me with the time zones, but it was good. I had a really good time. 5 out of 5 stars. Then, oh no, sorry, 4.5 stars. 4.5 stars for Clockwork Angel. Then I read Hunted by Megan Spooner. I gave this 3.5 stars. It was good. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, in all honesty. I can't really remember what happened fully. It is the general retelling that her dad goes missing and she goes to look for him, but it's sort of done a little bit differently. And this is kind of done in such a way that you're getting it from the girls, you're getting it from her view, but then every now and then you will get a little written thing from the Beast's view. The Beast is literally a beast in this, and yeah, it was just okay. I wasn't a huge fan of it. It's not my favourite Beauty and the Beast retelling, but I'm comparing it to the likes of ACOTAR and A Curse So Dark and Lonely, so you're up there with the big boys really. But 3.5, it wasn't too bad. Do recommend if you are into retellings. Then I read Misery by Stephen King. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. If you don't know what Misery is about, where have you been? I read this and I said when I picked this up that this is probably going to be my favourite Stephen King novel of all time. When I read it, it was. It's not anymore. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But this is following an author called Paul Sheldon, who ends up in a car accident and he ends up being taken to this lady's house called Annie Wilkes, and she's looking after him. Well, she's pretending she's looking after him. As it turns out, she is his #1 fan, and she's obsessed with his stories about Misery, who is a character in one of his books. And his latest book, she ends up managing to find the manuscript for his latest book and finding out that Misery dies in this book, and she is not a happy bunny. She tortures him until he rewrites the story, and it's honestly the thing with Stephen King is he's an amazing writer, and the emotion that he pulls out of me, honestly, all his books should be 5-star really, but I think I just get that emotional that I struggle so much to just kind of, it affects my daily life. So like, I got to a point where I was 100% genuinely concerned about Paul's mental health and well-being and how he was doing and physical health. I was really worried about him. Now bear in mind that Paul is a fictional character and it's a story, it's going to end in like 200 pages. I was really worried about him. So it's a really good emotion to be having and reaction to be having to a book, obviously, because it means that the writer's doing the job very well. But I think just because of how much it does affect my life, and it really does affect me, like I was having sleepless nights about this character and stuff, which is silly because it's a fictional character. I think I don't necessarily knock a star off, but it affects me a lot, and I don't know. I can't explain why it's not 5 stars. It probably should be, but it's just not. And yeah, it just really affects me. It was a ride. It was so good, and I loved the story. I don't think I'll ever reread it. It was extremely brutal, very shocking in the violent sense. I would be careful if violence is a trigger warning for you. Just be very careful. It's extremely violent, and also psychologically violent as well. Just be really careful. Drug abuse, all sorts in here. So, but it was really good. I really enjoyed it. 4 out of 5 stars. I don't know what else to say. The House with Chicken Legs, I gave this, what did I give this? 3.5 stars. This is by Sophie Anderson. This is a middle grade. I loved the illustrations in this. I think I just struggled with this a teeny tiny bit because I hated the main character. I didn't hate her, just really strongly disliked her for most of the book. And I think that's kind of the idea, but I probably went a bit too far in really disliking her. So it affected the story for me quite a bit. She's quite a, so basically we're following Marinka, who is, she lives in the house with chicken legs with her Baba Yaga, who is her grandmother, and she wants to have a life outside of the house with chicken legs, but she can't. Basically, Baba Yagas use their house with chicken legs to guide the dead through to the other side, essentially, and she doesn't want to do that. She doesn't want to become a Baba Yaga. She wants to live a normal life. She wants to go to school. She wants to have friends, but the house with chicken legs is constantly moving about, that she can't make friends with people. So she essentially kind of like runs off, and she just causes absolute chaos. She's very selfish, and I struggled to connect with her. It was really difficult for me to connect to her. I was really invested in the story as a whole, which is really good, but I just struggled to connect to her. I just really wanted to jump in the book and strangle her, to be perfectly honest. She just really annoyed me. 3.5 stars. I do recommend picking it up. I did love The Girl Who Speaks Bear more. I thought that was so much better, but I do recommend picking it up if you enjoy middle grade and you like Sophie Anderson's writing. It was good. Then I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was also on the BookTuber's favourite video, and I loved this. This was 5 stars for me. Again, Taylor knocked it out of the park. I listened to the audio again, which I highly recommend. It was fantastic. Yet again, Taylor had me googling Evelyn Hugo and some of the movies that she was in, and it was unreal. Absolutely loved it. 100% believed every single word of it. Thought Evelyn Hugo was real yet again. So yet another new favourite historical fiction for me. I absolutely loved it. I think I'm going to read everything by Taylor Jenkins Reid from here on out. 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. Then I DNF'd a couple books. So I DNF'd A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This was on the BookTuber's favourites. Unfortunately, I am gutted about DNFing this because I know that it's G from Book Roast, one of her favourite books. I know it's a lot actually of people who are into sci-fi's favourite book, well, not favourite books, but one of their favourite sci-fis, and this was Becca from Becca and the Books, like one of her favourites from 2019, and I'm gutted that I DNF'd it. I think I got to, where did I get to? Page 249. I should have just carried on really for the sake of it, but I just couldn't be bothered. I was bored, really bored. The only character I was invested in was Kizzy, who was completely batshit crazy, and that's the only reason I was invested in her. I'm always attracted to batshit crazy characters. I'm not sure why, but I am. She was crazy and I loved her, but that was the only character I was bothered about. Essentially, this is following a crew who are obviously out in space, and they are looking for a really big payout. They want a really big job so that they can get a good payout, and they end up with a new crew member, and I don't really know what else happened from there on out. So you are just following. It is very character driven, and I think maybe that's why I've gotten a little bit bored, because nothing actually happened. Essentially, there was ample opportunities for things to get exciting and something to happen, and it just was resolved very quickly, very nicely. It was too nice, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but I've gone into it looking for a sci-fi adventure, and there was no adventure. It was just sci-fi, and I just was bored. I was very, very bored, and I DNF'd it for that reason, and I'm just gutted, absolutely gutted, because I really wanted to love this. I wanted to get into this series because I know it's really loved in the booktube community, and I'm really sorry, but I just couldn't do it. I'm gutted, absolutely gutted. Devastated. I'm so sorry, Becky Chambers. Yeah, I just wanted more from it. I wanted there to be some action, and there just wasn't. There was several ample opportunities, and they just fizzled out very, very quickly, and I just needed more from it. Sorry. The second one I DNF'd. I'm really gutted about this. Came in the Fairy loot box for January, and I'm really, really, really devastated about it, but I just struggled a lot. It was Woven in Magic by Isabella Vanyas, and I got... how far did I get into this? I think I probably got to page 145. I got to about here. So I was taking part in the read along with Fairy Loot and Cody, who was hosting the read along, and I just struggled. There's a lot of Spanglish in here that obviously I don't speak Spanish, which I hate about myself, to be honest. I really want to learn Spanish. I think had I been able to speak Spanish, I might have enjoyed it a bit more. I can see that it is very beautifully written. I just didn't... the Spanglish really distracted me. So okay, so I'm a person that will really, really try and pronounce words properly in a book. So if you know, in fantasy you get a lot of very strange names, I try and listen to fantasies, if I can do, on audio, because I will spend a lot of time trying to pronounce that name correct, if that makes sense. So to go into a book that has partial English, partial Spanish in it, I'm spending a lot of time sitting there trying to figure out exactly what they're saying. So I'm sat with a translator in my hand, writing it all in, trying to figure out what they're saying, and it's taking me a long time to get through the book. It's distracting me away from the story, and I really struggled with it. I just ended up DNFing it, which is a shame, because I know that everybody, pretty much everybody that's read this has loved it. I'm sure that everybody that was on the Fairy Loot read along really enjoyed it, and I'm devastated. I know that Cody really liked it, so, well, I think she did anyway. I'm gutted because it's such a beautiful book as well. So yeah, another one that I'm devastated about DNFing, but there's not a lot I can do about it. Then I read My Not So Perfect Life by Sophie Kinsella. I gave this 4 stars, probably the majority of the way through the book. It was only like after the halfway point that I really got into this book, so it was going to be a 3-star for me, but the ending just really brought it up. I really enjoyed it. We are following a girl called Katie Brenner, who is probably about my age. She lives in London. She's got a glamorous job and a super cool Instagram feed, and it's all a lie. Her life is not that great at all. She eventually gets fired and she has to move back in with her mum and dad, and she comes from like the country, if you like. Her dad and stepmom live on a farm, and they are constantly coming up with quirky ways of trying to make money, and they eventually come up with this idea of, you know, like camping. And Katie sort of recommends to her dad and stepmom, why don't they try glamping? So it's like a glamorous camping kind of thing. Anyway, she helps them kind of set it up, because obviously she's not at work. She's told them she's on a bit of a sabbatical from work, and then her boss turns up and things just go AWire from there. I went into this thinking this was going to be more about, you know, social media and lying on social media and then being found out about it, and it wasn't really. That was only like a very small part of it, but it was really, really good in the end. I really enjoyed the direction it took after the halfway point. It was very, very good. I really enjoyed it. I probably won't reach for Sophie Kinsella again, to be perfectly honest. This is my first Sophie Kinsella book, but it was good in the end. 4 out of 5 stars. This was my Contemporary Book Club's pick for the month of February, so yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. Then I reread Hatstopper Volume 1 and Hatstopper Volume 2. I'm not going to go, well, very quickly. This is about a boy called Charlie who is openly gay. He came out as gay at school last year. Didn't really have much choice in the matter, but he did it anyway. And he's been bullied ever since for being gay. And then he meets this boy called Nick, who is a year or so above him, a year above him, I think, who is convinced that he is straight until he becomes friends with Charlie. And it is their story of friendship and then bit more, and I love this so much. It is a webcomic that has been turned into a book by Alice Oseman, and it's fantastic. Absolutely adore it. 5 out of 5 stars first time I read it, and the second 5 out of 5 stars first and second time I read it. Ready to set me up for Hatstopper volume 3, which is the chunkiest out of the 3 of them. 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. It was amazing. Don't know what else to tell you. Then I read Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. I read this in one day. This was for Cody's book buddy read for the month of February, and I loved this. I've been wanting to pick this up for a very long time. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This is a mystery set in 2 different time zones, and this is following Stevie Bell, who goes to Ellingham Academy, which is an academy sort of for the very clever kids, and Stevie wants to become a detective, a little bit like Sherlock Holmes, more than, you know, your general detective, but she's obsessed with Sherlock Holmes and things like that. But we're following 2 different time zones, so we're following the current timeline, which is Stevie at Ellingham Academy, and then we're following 1936 at Ellingham Academy, where this original mystery sort of happened, and Stevie wants to solve the mystery, and this just sort of goes in a direction I was totally not expecting, and I thought it was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I just blasted through it in one day. It was so good, and I can't recommend it enough. I'm very excited to pick up The Vanishing Stair and One Hand on the Wall. I can't remember what the last one's called, but I'm really excited to pick both of them up. Then I picked up Bingo Love by T. Franklin, Jen St. Ong and Joy San. I think that's how you pronounce it anyway. Picked this up for Female Feb and also for Black History Month. So as you can see, both of our characters are black and they are lesbians as well. Actually, it turns out that well, yeah, I never really figured out if they are or whether they're just bi. I think they're probably bi, but yeah, basically these 2 girls meet at, Hazel and Marie meet at bingo one time when they're younger. They become friends, and then they realise they want to be more than friends, and then they get split up by the grandparents, and they go down their own paths, and then some years later they end up meeting again, and it's just the cutest thing. I absolutely love it. It's literally so short. It's about 80 pages long, but I just thought it was the most beautiful story, and I absolutely loved it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was very cute indeed. Then I read Third Degree by James Patterson and Andrew Gross. This is the 3rd in the Women's Murder Club series, so I can't really tell you what happens in this, but we're continuing to follow Detective Lindsay Boxer, and I think she becomes a lieutenant in this, or she's already a lieutenant. I can't remember. It's very confusing because on the back of the 4th one it says detective, but they call her lieutenant in the thing. I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot going on. Anyway, it's very good, and I highly recommend if you are into your detective stories that also have like a background thing going on with the main character as well, with their life and stuff. Really good. Shocked the life out of me. I actually threw this book across the room at one point. I was devastated. James Patterson's got a really good way of making you fall in love with characters and then killing them. So he just takes your heart out of your chest, stamps all over it. Devastated. Gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was brilliant. Then I read Middlegame by Shauna Maguire, which was also on my booktuber's favourite video, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. Now I'm a little bit gutted about that because I thought this was going to be a 5-star read. This is following Roger and Dodger, who are twins that were separated at birth. They have been engineered by a guy called Reed, and they are almost, well, not quite godlike, if you like. They've got powers. One of them is really great with maths. The other, Roger, is skilled with words, while his twin sister Dodger, she's skilled with maths. And they, as they're growing up, from about the age of 7, I think, they can kind of listen to, like, hear each other. They can get in each other's minds and hear each other, and they think the other is an imaginary friend for a while until they realise that that's not the truth, and they can hear each other. And it's, you're just following them over a number of years with lots of things going on in between. I didn't particularly like the chapters where we were following Reed. I preferred the chapters where we were following Roger and Dodger, but after a little bit it got a little bit samey, if that makes sense. I don't know if it needs to be this big. Do you know what I mean? So I just struggled with it in that sense. I don't know. I got to a point where I just sort of felt like I wasn't caring anymore, which is a shame because I really like Roger and Dodger as characters. I thought they were great. And an element came into this that I wasn't expecting either. It was cleverly done actually, and I did like that element. There was lots going on and I didn't fully figure out what fully was going on. I was very confused with it, really confused, which is my problem, not the book's problem. But I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was okay for me, and I really enjoyed Roger and Dodger for the most part, so yeah, it was fine. 3 out of 5 stars. I'm sorry. I read The Wreckage by Robin Morgan Bentley. I was sent this by a publisher to listen to on audio, and I was reviewing it. So I have done a review for it. I will leave a link to it down below. But the way that I, excuse me, the way that I ended up sort of rating this was I did it a bit like how they do it on Audible. So they sort of rate it by performance, story, and then an overall rating. So for the performance I gave it 4 stars because the audiobook was fantastic. They really brought the characters to life and I really enjoyed the audiobook. For the actual story I gave it 2 stars, and then for overall I gave it 3. So this has got an overall rating of 3 stars from me. The story is following a character called Ben who is on his way to school. He is a school teacher, and he ends up running over a man on the motorway who jumps out in front of his car. This guy is called Adam, and Adam, I think he's called Adam. I said that so confidently then. I think he's called Adam, and he doesn't die at the scene. He gets taken to hospital and he ends up getting put into a induced coma. After a few days, his wife Alice has to make the decision whether or not to keep him on the ventilators and stuff, or whether to let him go. He has a son called Max who is about 7 years old, and Ben is so racked with guilt about this that he ends up going to the hospital to try and see Adam and see if he can see his wife and stuff as well. And he ends up becoming friends with Alice. Now Alice is, they become more than friends and things go a bit haywire, and I struggled with this for a number of reasons. So I struggled with it in the sense that I really disliked both the characters, the main characters, Alice and Ben. For different reasons. I disliked Alice because I felt that she was quite a neglectful mother. I didn't feel like that she would take responsibility for Max very often. She would palm him off to the neighbours whenever she could, and she drank too much, and just, I understand, which to be honest she wasn't grieving very well either. It turns out there is a reason for it in the end, but I just didn't like the way that she was handling things, and I didn't like her as a character. And then I didn't like Ben. As it turns out, this book this book has triggers in it for me that I didn't know I had. So I struggled. I struggled with the book. I limped through this book essentially. I forced myself through it so that I could do the review for it, and it was a struggle for me on my mental health. I really struggled a lot with this book, and then the following week as well, because I was reading this during Thrillerathon, which I don't usually read thrillers. So I just then for the rest of the week I was really not in a great way. It was a struggle, a massive struggle for me. So it turns out there is like a stalker type element in here as far as Ben's concerned with Alice, and that became an issue for me. I apparently don't do stalker, possession, obsessive type tropes at all. I can't do it, and it's a huge problem for me, and I didn't know it was a problem for me until I read this book. So it's a good job I've never picked up the book you. So I, on that basis, obviously that's not a fault of the books at all. That's a problem that I have that I didn't know I have, and I now know I do. So I will not be picking books up like this again in the future. But on that, I try not to rate it too harshly on that basis. But I did not like the characters. I didn't like the characters. I just really struggled. I struggled a lot with it. 3 out of 5 stars. It's a great book if you are into your stalker type things going a little bit too far type of book. It was cleverly done. It was very cleverly done, and I like the way it was done in the end. But I just struggled a lot with it, and I'm really sorry. I did struggle with it. So the next book that I read was Rose Madder by Stephen King. I was buddy reading this with Bobby, Gav, Cody and Monica, and I've really enjoyed this. Gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This is my new favourite Stephen King book, as I was mentioning earlier with Misery. So this is following Rose, who, her husband is a cop. He's called Norman. He's a cop and he beats the crap out of her regularly. He's very abusive with her, and the opening scene of this book, just be very careful. Trigger warnings for you are violence, like domestic violence, sexual violence, rape, miscarriage. Just be really careful if those are all trigger warnings for you. Also throughout the book there is racism and just many things like that. Just be extremely careful picking this book up. It wasn't even the first chapter, it was the prologue. Shocked me silly. I had to put the book down. I'd only gone through the prologue and I had to put the book down and come back to it. Regularly I had to do that with this book, but the emotion that it brought out of me was incredible yet again, like it was with Misery. I was so worried for Rosie. Essentially she ends up waking up one day and realizing that she needs to get out of there, otherwise he's going to kill her at some point. So she steals his bank card and she runs away. She gets away, and then you are following her story, mostly her story of trying to get her life on track and find herself and all this lot, but then also the story of Norman trying to find Rosie. And again, I was reading this during the week that I'd just finished the Wreckage, and I was reading it during Thrillerathon, and I was the whole stalker thing was an issue for me, and I struggled with it in that sense, but other than that it was fine. Obviously there is possession and stalker and obsession with Norman with Rosie. He wants to get her back and all of that lot, but there is a paranormal element to this book as well, and it's very cleverly done. I wasn't sure about it at first, but it's extremely cleverly done, and I do highly recommend picking this up. I really loved it. Huge shout out to Bobby for mentioning this one, to not only to Cody and Gav but also to myself. So yeah, highly recommend picking this one up. Then I DNF'd The Other People by CJ Tudor, which was the pick for the Literally Dead book club, which is Kayla from Books and Lala's book club. I ended up DNFing this because it was just after the Wreckage and I was really struggling, and I didn't really want to pick up any more thrillers. I didn't care about the characters in here. I was struggling. I did get like 100 pages in, but I just couldn't do it. I'm sorry, it was a struggle for me. I also DNF'd The Prairie of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I know a lot of you are going to be shocked and devastated about this. I got 120 pages in and I just couldn't carry on any longer. I can't tell you what happened in those 120 pages. I've got no idea. There may have been a dragon or two, I'm not sure. I was here for the dragons and the hype, and also booktuber's favourites, but I can't, no. I couldn't put myself through another 600 pages of the book. I'm devastated, absolutely gutted. Maybe high fantasy isn't for me, maybe that's what it is, and maybe I'm going to find that out later on in the year, because I'm picking up The Final Empire, Mistborn Book 1 by Brandon Sanderson in April, so that's high fantasy. We will find out whether or not high fantasy is for me, you know, adult high fantasy. We will find that out, but maybe I'm just, this year I think for me is trying to find what books I do and do not like, and obviously this month has been a massive hit for me finding that trigger, and then just this book. I'm gutted, absolutely gutted. I'm sorry. Then I read I Am Not a Serial Killer by Dan Wells. This was picked for me by Siobhan, and I really enjoyed this. It was so good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was a very good book indeed. I thought it was a non-fiction at first when I picked it up, and it's not. It's a fiction, and it's very well done. It is following a young boy who is absolutely convinced that he is going to be a serial killer when he's older. He has to go and see a therapist and stuff because he's got very serial killer type tendencies. Apparently I did not know these things, but serial killers tend to wet the bed and they will set fires, and they will also dissect animals. I knew the dissecting animals thing, but I didn't know about the wet in bed thing and the fires thing. So yeah, that was really interesting on that front. But the young boy lives with his mother and her, well, she doesn't, I don't think her sister lives with them, but his auntie works with them. They have a mortuary in the not the basement of their house, but downstairs in their house, and he works with the dead bodies with his mother, and he goes to see a therapist, and he's trying his very hardest. He's got rules for himself to stop him from actually becoming a serial killer. It's all very, very strange, but it's really, really good, very cleverly done. There is again a spoiler. So nearly spoiled that for you guys then. There is a lot going on in this book, and I do highly recommend it. It's very, very good if you are into your serial killer type books. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. 4 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up The Dry, which was also picked for me by Siobhan, but it was also on my booktubers favourites because it was one of Siobhan's favourites from last year. This is by Jane Harper. It's set in Australia, and it's following again well, not kind of following 2 timelines, but it covers 2 different timelines. So following our main guy, who is policeman Aaron Falk, and he goes back to his hometown of Kiwara, where he hasn't been in a long time. There is a drought going on in Kiwara. There hasn't been any rain for 2 years, and people are struggling massively. He goes back for a funeral for his childhood best friend Luke, and his wife and child, young boy, which literally the only person surviving the family is the daughter Charlotte. I think she's called Charlotte anyway, and essentially it's thought that Luke killed his wife and son and then killed himself because of the drought. That's how it's going down. And when Aaron gets there, there are other people that think that that's not how things have gone down at all, and Aaron ends up taking some time out and trying to investigate it. However, Aaron was kind of run out of town quite a long time ago because he was thought to have killed one of his friends, and who was a young girl at the time, and it's sort of following that story as well and kind of solving that mystery. So there's 2 different mysteries going on here, and it was very cleverly done. I really enjoyed it. I listened to the audiobook. What I loved about the audiobook was that they actually used an Australian guy rather than using an English or an American guy to do an Aussie accent. So it's very, very clever. Really, really loved it. Didn't see the twist happening in the end. I loved this. 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. Very excited to pick up the next one. Then I read Full Metal Alchemist Volume 1. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. It was very religious, and that's not really up my street. It's not my thing, but it was good. It was fine in the end. I don't know if I'll continue with the series, but it was just okay. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. This is a manga, so it was fine. I wasn't a huge fan. Then I read The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I know Emma from Muggle Glamour is doing a readathon at the moment where we're reading these one a month in the run up to the new book coming out in May. I think it's in May. That sounds about right. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. Obviously I know the story because I've watched the films a bazillion times. I don't know if I've read this book before, but according to Goodreads I have. Whether or not I was lying to myself, I don't know. But I read this anyway. It could be a reread, it could be a first time. Who knows? It's a mystery to me. But I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This was fantastic and I absolutely loved it. I'm not explaining the story because if you don't know The Hunger Games, where have you been? Then I read The Identity Thief by Alex Bryant. This was sent to me by the authors, so thank you to K&M Books for sending me this. Let me just double check that. Yeah, K&M Books for sending me this. I really, really enjoyed it. It was fantastic. This is, I can't decide if this is middle grade or not, but it's quite violent for middle grade, if you like. So I'll read off the back because it's easier than me explaining. There's a lot of things going on in this book, but I really, really recommend it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. From the shape-shifting sorcerer called Cuttlefish unleashes a terrifying wave of magical carnage across London. A strange family known as the River People move into Cassandra Drake's neighbourhood. Oh my god. Neighbourhood. Are the 2 events connected? Spoiler alert, no. Alex's writing is brilliant. What I love about this is it's done in like mixed media format. So there's like a poster, and then there are like newspaper clippings and, you know, like blog posts and things like that. It's done really, really well. I really enjoyed it. Once I got into it, it was very fast paced. I just really wanted to carry on with the story. This is the first in the God Machine series. There is a novella that follows straight on from this where you get the Cuttlefish's side of the story as well, and then the second book, I'm not sure when that's coming out, but I'm hoping it's soon because I really, really enjoyed this. This has literally just come out on the 28th of February, so do recommend checking it out. It is 4.5 stars from me. It's very, very good. Then I read Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson. I loved this. It was not what I was expecting at all. This is like This is like vigilante superhero type story, which is literally right up my street. Like, I love The Flash and I love Arrow, and I love those types of programs and things like that, so I really enjoyed this. I don't know how to explain it, it's very confusing, but I really enjoyed it. I had a great time with it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I actually really loved it. I will read the back for you because it's probably better than what I'm going to describe. 10 years ago, calamity came. It was a burst in the sky that gave ordinary men and women extraordinary powers. The awed public started calling them epics, but epics are no friend of man. With incredible gifts came the desire to rule, and to rule man you must crush his will. Nobody fights the epics, nobody but the reckoners. A shadowy group of ordinary humans, they spend their lives studying epics, finding their weaknesses and then assassinating them. And David wants in. He wants Steelheart, the epic who is said to be invincible, the epic who killed David's father. For years, like the Reckoners, David's been studying and planning, and he has something they need. Not an object, but an experience. He's seen the Steelheart bleed, and he wants revenge. It's so good, and I can't recommend this enough. It was fantastic. I loved it every single minute. It was really good adventure. Then I read 4th of July by James Patterson with Maxine Patriot, the 4th in the Women's Murder Club series. Blew my mind, absolutely amazing. I just loved where this story went. I gave this 4.5 stars in the end. I loved it. I just loved where this story went. I was on the edge of my seat for a lot of it. I wondered what the hell was going to happen, but it was very good. Can't tell you what's happening because it's 4th in series. Then I read The Creakers by Tom Fletcher. I listened to this on audio. I do recommend listening to Tom Fletcher's books on audio. They're very good, but follow with the book because you've got some gorgeous illustrations as well. The Creakers sort of make a little bit of an appearance in The Christmas Saurus and the Winter Witch, which is the second in the Christmas Saurus series by Tom Fletcher, and I loved this. It was really good. Creakers are the things that live under your bed at night, and all they want is your rubbish, but you're cleaning your rubbish up and you're putting it away in the tip, and the Creakers are mad and they steal all the adults because they want the children to be messy again so that they can have all of the mess. And that's how they live. They survive with the mess. Below Earth in the Woleb, and they make their houses and keep their families going because they want all of your mess. But if you're not making mess, then they can't have your mess. So they steal all the adults, and then the children make lots of mess again, and then the Creakers are fine. But our main character, Lucy Dunstan, wants to find out where all the adults have gone, because her dad used to be the you know, like the bin, not the bin man, but like the trash man. So he used to take all the rubbish to the tip and regularly, and he was the first to be stolen. And it's really good. I loved it a lot. It was really good. Good adventure. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And then the last book, guys, we're nearly there. This is going to be such a long video. The last book is a graphic novel by Katie O'Neill. This is Princess Ever After, and this is a female-female relationship, also perfect for female-female feb and blackathon because one of our main characters is black. And this was really good. This is heroic Princess Amira rescuing the kind-hearted Princess Sadie from the tower, and they end up meeting an ogre who they teach to dance and fight, which is really weird and cute. And Princess Sadie's got this little dragon thing as well, which I'm obsessed with because, you know, Tea Dragon Society. And it was just really cute. I just really enjoyed it. It was very short indeed, to be honest. I could have done with it being a little bit longer, but it was really cute and I really enjoyed it. And I recommend, if you just want something short and light-hearted and really cute to pick up, it's great. 4 out of 5 stars. So that was my entire February wrap up. I can't believe I read 30 books in 29 days. That was ridiculous. Yeah, I think I did all right in the end. Gutted about the books I've DNF'd, but what can you do? There's not a great deal I can do about them. I think I might keep the Prairie of the Orange Tree for now and see if I fancy it again in another month or 2. Maybe see how I get on with Mistborn and then make my decision. But yeah, pretty gutted about those, to be honest. So yeah, I am sort of getting to a point now where I kind of know my reading types and my reading styles and what I'm wanting to pick up more of and what I'm not wanting to pick any more up of anymore. What I'm not wanting to pick up anymore. I don't know, that made no sense. So yeah, I'm kind of getting there with my reading style, which, you know, has been a long time coming, and hopefully that will reflect in my TBRs in future. I'm just looking at my March TBR now, thinking probably not because there is such a variety on there, but I don't know, we'll see. So yeah, my throat is really hurting now. I've got another video to do after this one and then another one after that as well, so I better go. But I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please give me a like down below if you have, and let's chat in the comments. Let me know what you thought of my wrap up. And also please let me know that you guys are okay for me to sort of split this into 2 videos every month and just do, you know, recently read halfway through the month and then one at the beginning of the next month for the second half of that previous month, if that makes sense. So I just think that's going to be easier than me going through this process every month and wanting to boot myself in the head for reading so many books. So yeah, I hope that you have enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.